Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 34 in our incredible new tutorial series where you are unleashing the power of your Raspberry Pi Pico W. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee, poured over ice. No sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at SunFounder. SunFounder is actually sponsoring this most excellent series of video lessons. And in this class, we will be using the Kepler kit for Raspberry Pi Pico W. Now, most of you guys probably already have your gear, but if you don't, look down in the description. There is a link over to Amazon, and you can hop on over there and pick your kit up. And believe me, your life and my life are going to be a whole lot simpler if we are working on identical hardware. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my solution to the homework assignment that I gave you in lesson number 73. But I must first ask, were you successful? If you were successful, leave a comment down below. I am legend, double chest bump. And if you were not successful, leave a comment down below. I folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. Okay, so what was the homework assignment in lesson number 73? Let me get out of your way, have another little sip of my go juice, and then come over. And what your assignment was that you were to create a MicroPython library that allows you to interact with the LED, and you would include the colors in a dictionary in the MicroPython library, and then you would have a function in there, or it's, in this case, we're going to have a class and a method inside that library that allows you to interact with the LED, so that really all your heavy lifting is done in the library. Okay, all your heavy lifting is done in the library, and then in the main program, it's really simple. You just create an LED object, and then you interact with that LED object, and that LED object via the library has all the color values inside of a dictionary. Hopefully that makes sense, but let's jump in and let's see if we can get started. First of all, as we had last week, we have the RGB LED. This is the ground leg. The long leg is one over from the left, so you have that long leg oriented towards your left. Then the very left is going to be R, and then the ground, and then the G and the B. The R is connected through a 330 ohm resistor to GPIO pin 14. Then the G comes down here to the ground rail, or the ground comes down to the ground rail, and then the G goes through a 330 ohm resistor over to pin 13, GPIO pin 13, and then the blue goes through a 330 ohm resistor over to GPIO pin 12. So RGB are pins 14, 13, and 12, and then that long leg is connected to the ground rail. Okay, pretty easy to set up. And so we're going to jump over here and get ready to code. So we're going to start by creating our library. So we're going to come over here and we're going to open that library that we had before, and that was in lib, and then that was RGB, okay? And when we started it, it was simply, last week we just put the dictionary. We just put the dictionary in the library. But now we're going to create a what? We're going to create an LED library that does the LED functions in it. So in that case, we're going to have to do what? We're going to have to create an LED class, okay? And that class then will become the core of our library. Now, we've been talking about object-oriented programming, and really what our goal here was to practice the things that we learned in the last few lessons: how to use dictionaries, how to do object-oriented programming using classes, and then to put that class in a library that we save. So this is bringing together and practicing all the things that we've learned in the last 3 or 4 lessons. Now, I'm going to keep this RGB business because I don't want to type it in again, but what am I going to need? I'm going to need a class to serve as the sort of core of the library, and I'm just going to call it my RGB, like that, LED. That is the class. And then for a class, we always need a what? We are going to need an init function. So it's underscore, underscore, an init method, I should say, because a function in a class is called a method. It is the init. Okay, and then what is the init going to be? Well, we're going to need self, which will be the name when we create an RGB LED object. And then what does this init really need to know? It needs to know where you have hooked up. I can come over here, I think, where you have hooked up your RGB LED. And so what we are going to need is we're going to need to know where the red pin is, where the green pin is, and where the blue pin is, like that. Okay, now we're going to come in here and we're going to set everything up. Well, first of all, what we're going to have is we are going to include this RGB LED, this RGB dictionary, but now that's going to need to be a self RGB, okay, because it's going to need to be indexed by the object name. So it might be my cool LED, and then self would be my cool LED. It'll be assigned that, but you type it just like I've done it here. So self RGB LED, that looks good. And then I have now got the dictionary. I've got the dictionary in there. And also, since I'm going to set up the LED inside the class, which will be our library, I need to from machine import pin and PWM. So a lot of the stuff that we did last time inside the main program, we're now going to be doing inside the library. And so we will set it up like that. And now I'm just going to run it to make sure. I'm going to run it to make sure it's not going to do anything, but at least it shouldn't crash. Okay, didn't crash. That looks good. So I've imported the methods that I need, and I've set up the library. Okay, now I wonder if I could even here just do print. No, I can't because I'm not calling it yet. So this isn't going to do anything until I initiate it. So now let's go ahead and let's set up those pins. So I would normally do like red LED is equal to PWM of what? Of pin of what? R, which will be passed to it like that. But if I did this, then this red LED would not be known down in the methods. So I need to do a self.red LED, and therefore red LED will be known in the methods that I set down below. And if this is completely baffling you, go back and watch those class, the videos that I did on MicroPython classes. Okay, now I've done the red. I need to do self.green LED is equal to PWM of what? Pin of what? G, the G pin that I will pass it. Self.blue LED is equal to PWM, and that is going to be pin of B for the blue pin. Okay, and then here you can see that I didn't. I'm going to just see if I get an error, because sometimes it, you see it doesn't find these errors because I'm not actually initiating the function. So we got to be kind of careful here. We've got to be kind of careful because it's going to be hard for us to debug as we go along. But I've got red LED, green LED, blue LED, and those are PWM of pin R, pin G, pin B. So I've just taken that from our main program last time. I put it inside of the library, inside of the class in the library, and what I've done is I've got this thing going, and then again we've got to do self so that it will be known down in the method that we use. Okay, so I've set up the PWM. Now I need to go ahead and set some values. So now self dot red LED dot frequency like that. We set it at 1,000. Okay, self dot green LED dot duty underscore unsigned 16 like that, and we're going to set it at 0. All right, when we set it at 0, that will turn it off. That's a duty cycle of 0. So I've got red, green, and blue LEDs set up, and this should be red. Okay, so I set the frequency to 0, I've set the frequency to 1,000, and I set the duty cycle to 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to do the other two LEDs, and so I will paste, and now I'll get my indentation all right here. Okay, so red, green, blue, I have created the objects, and then red LED, then this will be green LED, and this will be green LED, and then this will be blue LED, and this will be blue LED. So what does this do? If I create an RGB LED object, maybe I would call the name My LED, and that would be equal to the class RGB LED. What would I pass it? I would pass it the red pin, the green pin, and the blue pin. Then it is going to set up the dictionary for that LED, and then it is going to initiate those LEDs as PWM signals, and it's going to set their frequency and their duty cycle. So I'm just setting up all of those. Now, why are these indented differently? Because really this is all one line from here to here. It's one line, so this indentation should not matter. So I've set all of those up, and now they're set up in the init. And so now what do I need to do? I need to define that method, which before was a function. I need to define that method which will allow me to apply a color when this is called. So this is going to be make color, and then what is it going to need? It's going to need to know who it is, self, and then I'm just going to put MC for my color. All right. Now what is this going to need to do? It's going to need to get a red val, a green val, and a blue val, and that's going to come from what? Self.rgb of what? MC, my color. All right, so what is going to happen when I create the LED object? It's going to set all of this up, and it now knows what the dictionary is. And that dictionary is going to get passed down here because I defined it as a self.rgb here, which means down here, all the methods that are inside this class will know what RGB is, the dictionary, but I just have to address it as self.rgb. Again, this is review of stuff we did in that object-oriented programming lesson that I did on classes. Okay, so now I have red, green, and blue. That's all good. And now what I need to do is I need to apply the desired color MC onto the different channels. So what are those going to be? Self.red LED.duty underscore unsigned 16. Okay. And then you can go back last week. We worked through all this. It's an int of 65, 5, 35 divided by 255 times what? Times the red val. Okay. Why did I not have to do self red val? Because it's not used anywhere else. Red val is just used inside of this method. So red val is red val when you're inside this method. How does it know what red val is? Well, it gets it from self RGB, which is up here defined from that dictionary. Okay, so now I've got that, and now I've just got to do the other ones. And I need to close the duty method. And then I'll do the same thing for green LED.duty underscore unsigned 16. And then it is going to be an int of 65, 535, 35 divided by 255 times what? Green val. Again, no self because this isn't used anywhere but right here. Okay, then self dot blue LED dot duty underscore unsigned 16 int 65 535 divided by 255 times blue val, like that. Close the int, close the unsigned. One of the most confusing things in classes is where you have to decide, do you use a self dot this or self dot that, or do you just use the variable? Self dot LED dot duty, it has to be self because it is set up here. And so this has to know what was set up here. So to share the value between the init and the make color, we have to use self in front of it. And self will be, it will turn out to be whatever you name the object when you create an RGB LED object, okay? So now I've got those done. I've got those three things done. And really, that's all we need. All make color does, all that method does is it takes your desired color, which you got from the dictionary, and it sets your 3 LED channels to that, okay? Now, I think that is really all we need to do there. So I'm going to say save, okay? And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start writing my program. Okay, I'm going to start writing my program. Well, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to say from my library, RGB, import everything. Okay, now let me just see here. Can I print? Now I need to create, let's see. Let's go ahead and define our pin. So red pin, we said was pin 14. And then green pin was pin 13. And then blue pin was pin 12, like that. Okay. Now I'm going to create my LED objects. I'm just going to call it my LED. You can call yours whatever you want. What do? We go to RGB LED and we pass it what? Red pin, green pin, and blue pin, like that. What is RGB LED? RGB LED is the class. Okay, so I am creating an object, my LED, of the class RGB LED. How does it know what RGB LED is? I imported it from RGB. Okay, so it's like that. Now, this, I think, should run and do absolutely nothing, but hopefully we won't get an error. Okay, when I run this, look at this. It creates the MyLED object, but it doesn't get an error. Well, let's just see if I can look at something. So I'm going to say print, and what am I going to print? I'm going to print my LED, that is the object, dot what? RGB, which is the library. Now let's just see if that will work. Look at that, boom. Okay, so that is indicating that at least we don't have any gross errors in the, we don't have any gross errors in our library because we've been able to down here in the main program get that dictionary. Okay, we've got the RGB dictionary and we were able to print it out down here. Okay, so that is really, really good. Okay, so now look how simple this program becomes. I'm going to do a try. Okay, so I can exit cleanly, and then I'm going to say while true, and this will be our main loop, but I want to come down so I don't forget, and I'm going to do the except down here before I really finish writing all the while stuff. And what am I going to do on except? Well, I want to accept when there's a what? Keyboard interrupt, like that. And then what do I want to do? Okay, I'm going to define this. The red LED dot duty underscore 16, and that I'm going to set to 0. So I'm going to turn that off, and then the green LED dot duty underscore 16 is going to be 0, and then like that. And then the blue LED dot duty underscore 16 is going to be 0. Okay, now let's look at this. Red LED, green LED, blue LED is over here on here. Okay, now let's run this. Let's just put a pass here because we might have to think about that a little bit. Let's see what happens. Let me stop it. Okay, let me run it. And it looks good. What happens if I do a Control C? Okay, red LED duty is not defined. So what do I need to do? I need to tell it that I'm working with my LED dot. My LED dot. And then my LED dot, like that. Okay, now let's run it. And then we will do a Control C. And it's still not understanding that. So let's look over here. You see, I've got to get down to this particular function. Okay, and so probably what I'm going to need to do here is I'm going to need to do a define, and then I'm going to say clear LED. It's going to need to know self, and then that is all it's going to need. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 3 duty cycles, and I am going to put them here like that, and I'm going to say clear LED like that, and then I'm going to set all of these duty cycles for each one of the LED to 0. Okay, so now I will save that. That's the library that I'm building. And then here, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to call the method clear, but it would be my LED dot clear LED. And then I really don't have to pass it anything because I'm just doing that. And then what I'm going to do is say print program has terminated, like that. Close the string, close that. Now let's see what happens. Okay, so it is running without an error. And then if I put Control C, program has terminated. Okay, now why did it not work the first time that I was doing it? Well, I said red LED, it knows what it is, but dot duty, I can't get to dot duty directly. I have to go through what? The self.red LED. So you have to be working within the parameters of the class. Okay, but now it is working. So we got to kind of think through these things carefully as we're going. All right, now what do we do? While true, now this is going to be the main program. Let's get the color from the user. My color is equal to input. What color do you desire? Like that. And then space, close the string, close the input, and then my color equal my color dot lower, so we're going to change it to lowercase like that. And then if my color is not in RGB. But how do I get to that RGB dictionary? It has to be my LED.RGB. Okay, so if it's not in that, I'm going to print my color, comma, you can use a single quote, space, is not a valid color. Please try again. Like that. Close the string, close the print. Okay, but now if my color is in my LED.RGB, we have a valid color on our hands, and then what do? We want to call make color of what? My color. Now, what did I do wrong here? I don't know what make color is, because make color is a function in the class. Okay, RGB LED. The object name is what? I've got to talk to the object that I created, which is my LED. Okay, that was created here. That is of a class RGB LED over here, and it is the specific object of that class, my LED. Okay, now let's run this and let's see what happens. What color do you desire? All eyes on the LED, red. Boom! Success! Double chest bump. Okay, then we're going to go green, blue, fuchsia. Fuchsia is not a color. Okay, you know what I should probably do is, if it's not a valid color, what I should probably do is should say my LED.clear LED. So I just turn it off because it was not a valid color. So let's try that. Let's run it. Okay, what color do you desire? Red, green, blue, and then fuchsia, and then fuchsia turns it off because it's not a valid color. But let's go on cyan, magenta, yellow, that worked, orange, and then white, and then off, and then let's turn it back to red. Boom. Okay, that all works. And now what are we going to do? We can turn it off, and that worked. Let's turn it back to red. Okay, now the real question is, what happens if I do a Control-C? I do a Control-C to cleanly exit, and it turns the LED off. Okay, so guys, I hope this makes sense. In order to really make a library, what do you need to do? You need to create a class. That class, in the init, when you create an object of class RGB LED, I create an object of class RGB LED. How does it know what RGB LED is? Because I imported everything from RGB, and then when I create that object, it does all of this in the initialization. And what is all of this? I define the dictionary. Other people are going to want to use the dictionary, so I've got to give it the self. What is self? Self is going to be assigned my LED, so my LED.RGB is going to be this dictionary, and then my LED.red LED I set up the PWM on those pins, so that's all done. It's only done one time when I create the object. But then these things that I'm creating in here, like blue LED, because I put self in front of it, it can be accessed from my color, and it can be accessed, from make color, and it can be accessed from clear LED. And the way we access it from the outside is we access it by giving it the object name. The object name becomes self, and then so self my LED.clear LED will come down here. Clear LED, and self is what? My LED. Okay, guys, now why did I give you this homework assignment? I'm not trying to be tedious, but man, this class thing and this library thing, it really, you need to do it a few times before you're comfortable with it. So I hope that some of you guys were able to do the homework assignment. And if you weren't, at least you've seen me do it, and you've seen me do it now 3 or 4 times. So I'm hoping at this point you're getting comfortable with classes. I really need feedback from you guys. Are you starting to understand object-oriented programming? Are you starting to understand classes? And function inside of classes are called methods. So we're learning classes and methods, and we're going that next step to take the class and make it a library. And so this is getting into some really more advanced programming, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with. But let me know down below in the comments, are you starting to get comfortable with it? So we've learned functions, we've learned dictionaries, we've learned classes, and we've learned methods in the last few lessons, in the last 5 or 6 lessons. What are we going to do now? We're going to go now and start using more complicated hardware. And that more complicated hardware is going to need us to use classes, and it's going to need us to understand threading, and it's going to need us sometime to use both cores. And so we're going to need, as we move forward to the more complicated hardware, we're going to need to know how to use these things. And so guys, if you're not clear on it, I'm not giving you a homework assignment this time, but if you're not clear on it, you need to go back and review those last few lessons, because future lessons are going to require using both cores. They're going to require classes and methods, okay? And so you need to understand this stuff. So your homework assignment is to just get familiar with those, to become comfortable with it. And if you were not able to do this homework on your own, at least watch the video, turn the video off, and go see if you can do it on your own now without following me step by step by step. So if you weren't successful before on the homework, see if you can do it now without copying me line by line, because you're going to need to do it. So next week, we're going to get some new hardware. That new hardware will require us to use some of the more advanced programming techniques that we have just learned. Okay, guys, I hope that you are having as much fun taking these lessons as I am making them. I hope that you're not finding these things too tedious, but you've really finally got to get to the point that you feel comfortable with classes. As always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are standing with me on Patreon. You are the guys that keep these classes coming. Appreciate it. You can also help me by giving me a thumbs up on the video and leaving me a comment down below. That always adds to my old YouTube juice. And when you do that, this video will be offered to more people. And then if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, when you do, make sure you ring that bell so you'll get notification when future lessons drop. And as always, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people doing engineering and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.